Well, now take down your fishing pole and meet me at the fishing hole. I can't think of a better way to pass the time of day.
Rod Mob. This is The Splash, your Northern California fishing podcast.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. I'm Scott.
And I'm Sarah.
We're coming to you from Space Heater Central. I mean the Rod Mob Treehouse here in frosty Portola Valley. It's Thursday, December 20th, and this is episode 39 of The Splash, your weekly Northern California fishing podcast.
Well, next week we'll be off celebrating Fishmas, so this is our last podcast episode for 2012.
It's been a really great first year. We started this podcast back at the end of February. Our first episode was out at the Fly Fishing Show in Pleasanton. It's been a ton of fun covering the latest reports and news every week. We'd like to take a moment to thank everybody for listening and for your support, your great feedback, and most of all, sharing all those great reports.
We'd also like to give a big shout out to Scott Feist from Feisty Fish Guide Service, Chris's Fishing and Whale Watching out of Monterey, Bayside Marine in Santa Cruz, The Soul Man out of San Francisco, Matt Coles of Gilligan's Guide Service in Truckee, Delta Trolling legend Clyde Wands, Dave and Troy at Clear Lake Outdoors, John and Jonathan Politis, Rick at Tight Lines Guide Service, Shelley at Lake Comanche, Audi at San Pablo Reservoir, Dan and Victor at Headwaters Kayak Shop and Headwaters Kayak Fishing Club, and everyone else who keeps us posted with the latest fishing reports.
It's been a great year for fishing, and we definitely saw an uptick in salmon numbers this year. There's been great rock fishing all along the coast, and there's been some record-breaking catches right here in California.
Let's see. Back in August, Mike Elster of Mike's Fishing Guide Service in Douglas City set a California record for landlocked king salmon with an 11-pound, 3-ounce king salmon at Trinity Lake. The biggest kokanee ever caught in California waters was landed at Lake Berryessa, a 3.4-pound, 21-inch koke caught by Mike Rollins. Joe Bruce of Sonora set a lake record at New Melones Reservoir back in July when he caught an 8-pound, 1-ounce spotted bass on a crankbait. And in August, another New Melones lake record was set. John Gray of Sonora caught an 8-pound, 2-ounce rainbow trout. Collins Lake saw a new lake record this year, too. This one was for crappie, a 3.1-pound fish caught back in May. Joshua Giordino of Oroville set a state coho record fishing at Lake Oroville in March. Well, actually, Josh set a record in February when he caught a 6.1-pound landlocked coho salmon. Then he broke his own record 2 weeks later with a 6.84-pound coho. In Half Moon Bay, diver Dan Silvera set a new world record with the 37-pound lingcod he speared at the 2012 Sport Fishing Nationals. And just last month, Gary Howard of Livermore caught the biggest fish ever caught in a San Francisco Bay Area lake, a 6-foot sturgeon he reeled in and released at Lake Del Valle.
I'm making that list next year.
Good. We'll report on it right here on the Rod Mob Fishing Podcast.
I'll post it. I'll post my record catch.
Well, I hope you do.
I will.
Well, okay, let's take a quick look at this week's news.
Here's Sarah with the latest headlines.
We saw a story about a family of fishermen in Utah this week. They've been contracted by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the state of Utah to help rid Utah Lake of carp. Non-native carp were introduced to Utah Lake in the 1880s for recreational fishing, but quickly grew to become over 90% of the lake's biomass and completely shifted the lake's ecosystem. Over time, this has nearly destroyed the population of native June suckerfish. Now, the Loy family and their crew of 6 fishes 7 days a week, year-round, to help rid the lake of carp. The goal is to bring in 5 million pounds of carp each year for 6 years. Currently, they're in year 2. Last year, they pulled in just over 3 million pounds.
Wow, that's quite a honey hole.
Do you think they get tired of carp?
I can imagine.
Every single day. Carp, carp, carp. Well, we're getting into winter fishing, and in many places, that, of course, means ice fishing. There was an interesting report this week on how ice fishing has changed with the times. The days of chopping holes through ice, sitting outside in the cold, or being stuck in a big permanent fish house are over. Winter anglers fishing in cold conditions have gone from the Stone Age to the Space Age with quite a bit of modern equipment and technology at their disposal. Nowadays, you can get yourself a portable shelter, all kinds of electronics like handheld GPS systems, a flasher for showing lures and fish, and modern ice fishing suits are so well insulated you can even get away with not having a shelter, supposedly. Of course, rods and reels have come a long way too, and new and improved power augers makes cutting holes easy. Ice fishermen now have almost the same level of equipment and technology as what's available for open water fishing. Is that enough to get you interested in ice fishing?
Well, the hanging out in the little shelters was always the cool thing. It was like camping out on the lake, and like in Beautiful Girls, the guys out there with like Uma Thurman, and it's cool. I want the shack. Give me the shack back.
With Uma Thurman.
With the Uma Thurman.
Yeah. Well, here in California.
And some booze.
Well, here in California, Wednesday marked the completion of the largest network of marine reserves in the United States as the final section of California Marine Protected Areas became official. There are now a total of 848 square miles of protected waters along the California coastline from the Oregon state line to the Mexican border. 16% of California's state waters are now set aside as marine reserves, and 9% are off limits to fishing. Fish and Game officials said that establishing the reserves was an important step to ensure recreational fishing opportunities for future generations. Of course, with all the changes, you'll want to take a look at the new boundaries before you head out. One commercial crab fisherman got busted off the coast of San Mateo last week for setting his pots in a new reserve area. You can find all the guidelines on the DFG's website. Well, it's not just our state capital anymore. Sacramento has become the caviar capital of America. With a shortage of wild caviar, the Sacramento Bee reported this week that fish farmers in the Sacramento Valley area are producing over 80% of our domestic supply of caviar. And the DFG is giving the gift of trout to anglers in the San Francisco Bay Area, releasing thousands of fish weighing up to 2 pounds into over a dozen Bay Area lakes. Regional Manager Scott Wilson told the San Francisco Examiner that they want to create opportunities for families to spend quality time together through the time-honored tradition of fishing. Some of the lakes getting stocked are Merced Lake North in San Francisco, Horseshoe Lake in Alameda County, Bontempi Lake in Marin County, Lake Chabot in Solano County, and Campbell Perk Pond in Santa Clara County. So you can head on out and do some holiday trout fishing with the family, thanks to the DFG.
Well, that's it for the headlines. Now for some tight lines. If you're going to squeeze in some fishing over the next 2 weeks, here are your best bets. Things are starting to quiet down for the year out on the ocean. Rock fishing should be good until the season comes to an end on the 31st. Crab season goes to the summer, and halibut is open all year. In the San Francisco area, it's crab, cod, and lings. The Seawolf out of Emeryville Sport Fishing headed out of the gate and fished the Farallon Islands and returned back to the dock on Wednesday with 28 limits of rockfish and crab and a couple of lings. Dennis Baxter on the new Captain Pete out of Half Moon Bay is reporting excellent crabbing and rock fishing. Also, a lot of market-grade squid are being snatched up off the Ritz-Carlton. The new Captain Pete is having some special pre-Christmas crab-only trips, $50 for adults and $35 for kids under 16. For more info, check out www.newcaptainpete.com.
Good fishing out of Santa Cruz continues. Bayside Marine reports great scores of rockfish and lings near South Rock, Natural Bridges, and on the rock piles. Sea bass, Humboldt squid, and perch are on the bite, too. Steve Mendez reported in on Monday that there are sharks and stingrays in the triple digits out at Elkhorn Slough soaking whole squid. Steve's headed back out tonight for more. And we're seeing some reports of squid being caught off Moss Landing. In Monterey, when boats are able to get out, there are crab and rockfish limits. And sturgeon action is improving throughout the San Francisco Bay. The North Bay has been a hot spot for a while. Good reports are still coming from anglers working off the pump house. The South Bay bite is picking up with reports coming in from the Oakland Airport, Coyote and Hunters Point, and at the Dumbarton Bridge.
The Delta is littered with debris from the recent big tides, so striper anglers may want to focus on the shallower waters. The Bonisa shoreline is producing some stripers. Pittsburgh and Grizzly Bay continue to be hot spots for sturgeon using shrimp and eel. Last week, Jason on the Longfin hooked a monster 8 to 9 foot sturgeon in the shallows of Grizzly Bay. The Sacramento is also a good spot to land a dino these days. Rod mobber John Politis recommends Garcia Bend, Merritt's Landing, and Knight's Landing. John says the fish are holding closer to the bank, and you'll want to bring a strong rod holder. It tends to be a suicide bite.
Stay on top of the latest fishing action. Subscribe to Rod Mob Podcasts on iTunes. It's free, and you'll always get the latest episodes.
On the lakes, we spoke with Dave Brabeck of Clear Lake Outdoors on Wednesday for an update on the latest from Clear Lake. Here's Dave's report.
The minnow bite's been pretty good. You know, what little minnow guys are fishing, there's not a whole lot of guys fishing out there. The best bite for most guys for the last couple of weeks has been the 8-inch swim baits, the big swim baits. They're not wanting the little ones. They're wanting the big ones for some reason. I saw several pictures of over 40-pound limits, but even that's starting to slow down now that it's getting cold. Catfishing's been pretty good with the minnows. Other than that, there's not a whole lot going on. There's a few A-rig fish being caught, but that hasn't taken off like it did last year yet. Waiting for January to start warming up.
Any spots on the lake you might recommend right now?
As far as fishing minnows, I'd stick with the deeper water. Shag and Henderson, Dollar Island, Fraser, all of those have got fish on them. The key to the minnow fishing right now, a lot of guys want to move around, and if you move that bait around a bunch, you're not going to get bit. Just when I fish minnows this time of year, I drop it straight down, hit the bottom, lift it up about a foot, and hold it still.
Check out www.clearlakeoutdoors.com or call 707-262-5852 for more info.
Lake Berryessa's had a hot trout bite. Dave Rossi and Jonathan Politis reported in Tuesday. Dave said the bite is on and everyone was catching fish. Jonathan said they went out for trout and caught limits on minnows 10 to 15 down. He reports these fish were spectacular fighters with many jumps and line-screaming runs. The average fish was 2 to 3 pounds. Some got away, but they took a very nice stringer home. Bass fishing is on fire at Folsom Lake, and they're biting at Lake Oroville, too. We're hearing bass are hitting on almost anything, but jigs and spinnerbaits are working well for bigger fish.
In the East Bay area, as we mentioned at the top of the show, the DFG has been planting more than 30,000 pounds of rainbow trout this month and will continue over the next couple weeks. Heather Farm, Lake Chabot, Lafayette Reservoir, and Lake Merced are some of the lakes on the list. We post the week's trout plants on rodmob.com, so you can find a full list there, or check out the DFG's website.
Trout and catfish are biting at Lake Del Valle. The staff at the lake said, this week has proved to be rather chilly out, but if you bundle up and brave the cold, you'll find that the trout are hitting pretty good right now. The water clarity is getting better, and the trout are hitting on worm-egg combos, power bait, and mice tails. Even more effective have been spoons and crankbaits. Most people are bringing in their limit of trout. Black bass are hitting rainbow trout swim baits and spinnerbaits, and smallmouth are still hitting rattle traps and rooster tails.
The water level is up and a little dirty from the inflow at San Luis Reservoir. Live bait may be a better bet than trolling. Stripers are holding in the coves like Lone Oak and Portuguese, and near Basalt in the trash racks.
And in the Mother Lode area, New Melones is seeing a good trout bite from the recent plants. Glory Hole Sports reports good trout action from the banks using power bait, gulp eggs, or a crawler marshmallow combo. Tossing silver or gold Castmasters is working too. Trollers are picking up a few limits with fish holding in shallow water near the shoreline.
Shore anglers at Lake Amador are having success with power bait and mice tails. Crawlers, Castmasters, and needlefish are working well for trollers off the dam and coves. The water is stained, but it's fishable. Trout fishing is excellent at Lake Comanche. Recent plants have made the north shore of the lake a hot spot. Trout plants at Lake Don Pedro are paying off for anglers. Scented baits will help in the murky water. McClure Reservoir is producing late-season trout and bass limits. And McSwain Reservoir is getting bi-weekly plants, and we're seeing good reports from trollers pulling crawler blade combos. Shore anglers are using power bait and work in the handicap docks in the brush pile areas.
In the Sierras, Pyramid Lake continues to reward anglers facing the cold conditions. This week, more monster trout were taken by shore anglers using spoons at the Cattle Guard and Blockhouse areas.
We want to hear from you. Got a fishing report? A tip? A review? A comment on the show? Drop us a message on the Rod Mob hotline. Then listen for it on an upcoming episode. 662-ROD-MOB-5.
And on the rivers, it's cold on the Trinity, but the hardcores are hooking some great quality steelhead. Steelheading is off to a good start on the Smith River, with more fish moving into the river each day and with every storm. Steelhead are also making an appearance in the American River, and they should be hitting the Yuba soon. We know a bunch of you are going to be heading out after steelies. Be sure to post your winter steelhead reports to our Facebook page or shoot us an email at fishon@rodmob.com.
Woo! Fish! Woo! All right!
Catch of the week.
This week, our podcast album artwork is a best of from our great 2012 Catches of the Week. Congrats to all this year's winners, and we look forward to seeing your 2013 catches. Thanks again for the reports, and to all of you for being Catch of the Week.
And now for our poll question. Last week, we asked whether you're planning to do any more fishing this year. 33% of you said, nope, I'm done for the year. And 67% said, yes, I'm squeezing in as many days as I can. Well, for our final poll question of the year, we want to know, what type of fishing are you looking forward to next year? The salmon opener, spring trout, rockfish? We want to know. Head on over to rodmob.com to cast your vote.
Upcoming events you won't want to miss. Here's the Rod Mob calendar.
Well, with river salmon fishing and rock fishing closing at the end of the year, it's time for fishing shows. Two big upcoming Northern California shows are the International Sportsman's Expo and the Fly Fishing Show in Pleasanton.
Yep, these shows are a great way to spend the day taking in some fishing seminars and freshening up your gear.
The International Sportsman's Expo is January 10th through the 13th at the Cal Expo Fairgrounds in Sacramento. And February 22nd to 24th, the Fly Fishing Show returns to the Pleasanton Fairgrounds.
And coming to the Martinez Marina on January 26th is the 7th annual Diamond Classic Catch and Release Sturgeon Derby. The Derby, founded by Steve Talmadge of Flash Sports Fishing, celebrates the fishery by attracting the attentions of anglers and respecting the fish by promoting the release of sturgeon. There's a special division for kids. Don't miss out on this great event. For more info, check out www.diamondclassic.org.
And for more details on these and other upcoming events, just check out our events page at rodmob.com.
And if you have an event you'd like us to mention, just drop us a line at fishon@rodmob.com. Well, that's it for this week and for this year. Thanks again for listening, rating and reviewing the show, and for contributing your fishing reports.
We'll be back in 2 weeks to kick off 2013 with a bang. In the meantime, you can still keep up with us on Twitter, Facebook, and check out our latest videos on YouTube. We've got a great new video posted of some Delta action with John and Jonathan Politis, so be sure to check that out.
And if you've got some video footage you want to send in and we can share on an upcoming video, just shoot us an email at fishon@rodmob.com.
If you're hanging out with other anglers over the holiday, please help spread the word and tell a friend about the Rod Mob.
Have a very Merry Fishmas and a Happy New Year. And until next time, keep us posted.
Rod Mob.
It's fine.
We'll be right back.